I am Mike Rogers. I am co-chair of Rise Western New York. Who wants to go next?
Well, my name is Todd Vaarwerk. I'm a board member at Voice Buffalo, in addition to being the Chief Policy Officer at Western New York Independent Living Incorporated.
And
I
I'm
can
Andrea
go
Wick.
next.
I'm the Executive Director of
Oh,
L'Arche
sorry.
Buffalo.
I'm Kevin Ryan. I am a board member on behalf of SANYS for the Capital Region. I'm also SANYS co-vice president.
Glad you're here. Kat, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Kat Onset. I'm the Data Systems and Communications Organizer with Voice Buffalo.
Hi, everybody. I'm Renee Christian. I am the regional organizer for New York, Caring, New Jersey.
And then David, I know you just hopped on. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Hey y'all, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, I'm David Herring. Like Todd, I'm also a board member of Voice Buffalo, a grad student and public admin at Buff State University as well. Good to be here.
Glad you're here. And I think we're just waiting on Robin, who will be our last panelist today. But so glad you guys are all here. We're gonna get started in just maybe 2 minutes. We wait for a couple more folks to trickle in. But glad you all are here. Excited to have this conversation with you all today. I know there's been a lot of interest in hearing more about this and getting clarity as a community. And so it's good to be with you all this evening. Right, well, I'll get us started. Again, thank you so much for being here today as we have our community conversation on Olmstead versus LC. We have a fantastic group of presenters today, and excited to be with you all. Um, so much of this conversation is based on what kind of community do we want to live in. We have some pictures here of institutionalization, where we came from, and then some of our programming here at Lush over the last year. We're able to have folks out in the community doing things together. The Olmstead decision was that services need to be provided in the most integrated setting. And I see that there's some pushback to this idea, and wanted to remind you all of where we came from and also where we are now, right? When we think about this decision, we think about what community looks like. It's not just for folks with disabilities, but it is for all of us, right? I think it is easy to think, is there anything wrong with services being provided only in spaces for disabled people? Is there something inherently wrong with services being provided away from the general public? And while there isn't anything inherently wrong with that, it is important to have the choice to be in public, right? Disability is not something that is a far off concept. It is something that, God willing, will happen to all of us as we age, as we exist in our fragile mortal bodies. And so this decision is something that guarantees us the right to stay in public throughout the duration of our lives. It is something that allows us to be with our friends and our relatives and our loved ones as their bodies change. And it is one of the great joys of my life to be able to be in public spaces and integrate public spaces all the time through services that we provide. You can see in these pictures, it's not a change in the number of people. It is not a change in the kinds of disabilities, but a change in the way that we offer services, right? A change in who we believe the public is for. And so, yeah, as we think about this decision together, we're thinking about what kind of community do we want to live in as disabled and non-disabled people? Who do we see the public as? What are public spaces for? And so, as we think about this decision together and as we think about where we're going, making sure that our North Star is that the public, that parks, that museums, that public spaces are for everybody, and services can be provided in public spaces, because everyone deserves access to integrated settings, right? So glad you all are here. And then I'm going to introduce Mike Rogers, your regional organizer, to talk a little bit more about Olmstead versus LC through a story. We have some
All
more
right.
folks sliding in. Welcome in.
All right. So when we talk about inclusion, we talk about people being in the community, but these privileges, although they should be natural, many times for people with disabilities, we have to have litigation or laws to back us up because we don't always get the support we need just by being alive, right? So back in 1999, Lois Curtis and Elaine Wilson were in a hospital setting because they were receiving some care for some mental health issues, and they both also had developmental disabilities. Well, they were able to leave, and this was in Georgia. Um, but the hospital basically said, well, there were no services for them in the community, so they thought this wasn't right. So they brought a lawsuit, stating that those kind of restrictions violated Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And
And I just want to make sure that we're clear, right? The doctor said that both of them, both Elaine and Lois, could live successfully in the community. There was no reason for them to be in the hospital. They
yes,
should be able to leave. The
yes, they,
only
they, they
reason they
didn't
weren't
need to
able
stay
to
there.
leave was there wasn't a community placement for them.
Yes, they didn't need to stay there any longer for any kind of treatment, right? So they sued and they won. There was a Supreme Court decision that where we get the name Olmstead because they were suing Georgia, right? So that meant like what Andrea was saying, that meant that federally or throughout the country, people with disabilities had the right to live in the community and get services where they were, right? So for example, for myself, how does this matter? It matters because I live in my own apartment, right? So Olmstead bolstered the idea that I could get services in my apartment. My aid services and everything come to me. It allows me to live interdependently in the community, in society. So that's why this is so important. That's why this is so important. And let me see.
Is
Is
Robin here yet?
is Robin here yet?
Right now.
Okay. So we'll be gentle and give Robin a second to get on, and we'll
Well,
have
one of the reasons this matters, Mike,
sure.
is that we have to look at what living in an institution is really like, right? What choices do you get and what choices do you not get? So
Yeah,
you and I are living independent in the community, right?
yeah,
We decide what we have for breakfast. We decide
correct.
when we have breakfast, right?
Correct.
We decide, and we both have jobs. We got to get out. We got to go into the community in the morning, right? We don't get to decide when we get to be at work. They decide that for us, just like any other working person in the world,
Yes. Sure.
Yes.
right? But
Sure.
we still get the free decision to turn around and say, well, maybe I'm going to take a PTO day off today,
Sure.
or
Sure.
maybe I'm going to decide what my living room looks like. I'm going to decide who I live with and how long they stay,
Yes.
right?
Sure.
Hundreds of decisions that viewers of this video are going to make every day are made because you live independently,
Yes.
right? I give Robin a minute to take a deep breath
Yeah.
and tell her story. Yeah.
So Robin, you're a self-advocate, right?
Yes.
Now, for many years in your life, you lived in the former um, developmental center in West Seneca, which was an institution.
Yes.
What was that like? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
They they put us in cold showers if we were bad. And I was 3 years old then. I didn't have no control over that because because my mother could not take care of me anymore because my my father ran out on us when we were kids.
Okay. Like how was the food there? Can you tell us what it was like eating in the institution?
It was horrible. We had to have parade food so we would not choke.
So you didn't get to choose what you ate.
No.
There was a big kitchen and they just kind of gave you food, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you didn't really have a lot of privacy, right?
No. No.
And when you lived, did you get to go out freely and be in the community or anything like that?
No. We we were always locked.
You were always locked into that um that compound. I
Yes.
call it a compound. That's basically what it was.
Yes.
Um, now, um, what about when you said when you took a shower? Now, was that something that was private or I don't want to go into too much detail, I don't want to get too personal, but
No. It was not.
it wasn't that private. So
No.
everything was well, uh, I liken it to kind of like prison life, correct? It would you
Yes.
it was kind of like that.
Yes.
Now then after that, you moved into a group home, correct?
Yes.
Moved into a group home. You
Yeah.
you didn't necessarily like that very much, right?
No.
Right. But now you live in your own apartment with support,
Yes.
right? How is that better than an institution?
Because you get to do more things and you can hire and fire your own staff.
What kind of freedoms do you have versus an institution? What's your life like now?
I went to the gym. I can go up places, you know, have a life. You get to
You
eat
can
what you
have a
want. Yep.
life,
You get to eat
right?
what you want. Yep. Take a shower when you want.
And that's your staff in the background
Yep.
talking. Yeah. So when you hear people talking about things kind of being questioned and maybe maybe
You're
kind of
right.
the rules dialed back a little bit, how does that make you feel?
That makes me not feel good.
Does that scare you at all?
Yes.
All right. Is there anything else that you want to say? I wanted to make it kind of brief for you, but is there anything else that you want to say?
Don't make us do this over again because it will bring back bad memories.
It'll bring back bad memories. You when we used to volunteer and be a part of the situation out at Building 16 when it became the office for people with disabilities, you shared with me a lot of times you didn't even like to be back there because it made you feel like kind of get traumatized, right?
Yes, yes.
And
And
I
I
can
don't want, and I don't want to get traumatized.
yeah, yeah. A lot of people
Hello.
felt that
You
way.
okay?
Yeah.
I know
Well,
you're getting it's emotional. That's all right.
yeah, I don't want to go too much into that, but you love living how you live now, right? You talk about it all the time.
Yes.
Yes. So, but we want to thank you, Robin, for coming on and staying on because there's going to be some questions and stuff maybe that people will have. But thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Okay.
And so now we're going to go on. Todd is going to explain a little bit about the current situation as far as federally, what the Department of Justice memo that was recently released means and what it really means and what what we can do.
And I
So
wanted
I
to mention
see.
too, there'll be a time for questions afterward. So I know we have a lot of incredible things to share. So please hold on to your questions. You can write them down if that's helpful, and then we'll ask questions after.
Well, I thought I'd unmuted already. There you go. Let's be clear about what this means, first of all, right? For 25 years, right, the Olmstead decision has driven the states and the federal government's understanding of this disability policy. That is, that the Americans with Disabilities Act requires services to be in the most integrated setting appropriate to the individual, right? And
Yes.
for 25 years, Republican and Democratic administrations have met and lived up to that standard with regard to decisions they make about supporting people with individuals in the community, right? There's never been anything that has been brought to a state or a federal court where somebody has turned around and said, no, we want to turn this over, right? After 25 years, all of a sudden, a federal administration issues a legal memo about their understanding of what they think Olmstead means. Now, this doesn't have any effect directly on law. All it is just a memo, right? And any gamers that might be on or watching the video will understand the concept of this is rules lawyering, right? They acknowledge that the court said that it's illegal to unfairly institutionalize people. Where they turn the corner is they say the court didn't go so far as to say that we had a right to be in the community. The court just said it's illegal to institutionalize us, right? So now there can be this middle ground, they say, where you aren't being discriminated against if there's no community options for you, but you can be discriminated against because you can't get out of the institution. Now, why would they write something so delicate? Why would they write something so, two-faced? What is going on in other areas of, the federal government maybe, that might be driving this process forward. Now, let's be clear that the DOJ memo itself, because it doesn't directly affect law, right, that the only thing it affects is how the federal government implements its own decisions. And true to their word, DOJ rescinded previous Olmstead guidance based on this memo, right? What this is really about, though, right, is about a Supreme Court case that is currently on the docket for consideration called Texas v. Kennedy, right? And Texas v. Kennedy is genuinely about a bunch of states wanting to question Section 504 of the Rehab Act, right, which is the precursor law to ADA that affects the way disabled people ask federally funded government services, right? Now, originally, this was a case with 9 states in it: Alaska, Florida, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Montana, South Dakota, and Texas, right? Now they only have 3 left because Missouri, Kansas, South Dakota, Indiana, all of the other ones except Texas, Alaska, and Montana dropped out. Now, what this is the federal government wanting to give the Solicitor General.
Hey, Todd,
And,
what
yeah,
did they drop out of?
they basically they logged out of the lawsuit. They say, we don't need the Supreme Court to consider this for our state, right?
So what does that mean for us?
Well, I'm gonna walk through what the case talks about, and then we'll talk about that,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Because the trend here is the Supreme Court wants to make things about what the states do, right? The famous decision about abortion called Dobbs is all about things should be states' decisions, not federal decisions,
Mm-hmm.
right? They believe in very distinct power being divided in very specific ways. So what they're trying to do in Texas v. Kennedy and with this memo is they're trying to argue that it should be a state decision how they spend federal money. Okay. Now, in New York, right, we have some pretty strong protections in terms of our state constitution that were put in the last couple of election cycles. All right. So deliberately, the biggest impact we can feel if they lose Texas versus Kennedy is they're going to be giving money away regardless, but it's going to be up to the state to figure out how to spend it. So instead of arguing with the federal government about how the state is spending the money, we'll be arguing with state representatives about how to spend the money. So for us, the big thing is about making sure that the state understands what we expect them to do with the disability money they get. Our role becomes more important because our voices become more important. But is there an existential threat for New Yorkers? Probably not. The bigger problem, though, is states that don't have the protections we have in our state constitution are genuinely at risk for institutionalization going up. Because what we're going to see may not be a whole thing about there being less money, but now there will be more places to spend it. And the institutions are going to get a bigger cut of that potentially. Now, not so much, I think, in New York, because I genuinely believe with OPWDD and OMH and the health department and what it is that they know about how much money it costs to institutionalize someone, I think they want to be able to spend their money smarter, not harder. But our big thing is to be a bolster of support for those states that might need help communicating that message. It's really important that we go, and this is me up on my soapbox. I'm sorry, Andrea, I gotta do it, right? What kind of community do I want to live in? I want to live in a community where we stop being divided based on the disability we have and the funding source it comes from. Because I work for an independent living center that at the dawn of the disability rights movement, we all came together as brothers and sisters. It didn't matter if you were blind, developmentally disabled, deaf, spinal cord injured, mentally ill. If you had a disability, and to this day it's true, if you have a disability, you can get independent living services. But we all used to also advocate together. And advocating together had power. You don't need to raise your hand, Andrea. This is your show. What do you want?
Oh, no, I was clapping.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm heartily agreeing with you.
So what I want to be able to encourage people, right? First, the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the chat the website for the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, that you can check this and find out what's happening with Texas versus Kennedy, right? A lot of it is legal language. Don't lose yourself in the legal language, but they're going to tell you when a state drops out, and they're going to tell you, what's happening with the arguments. Because the big thing about this memo that we've been talking about is that it has now been submitted as evidence to the Supreme Court of the government's position, right? Which is probably why they did it in the first place. So that they could get it in front of the justices, and so that the Solicitor General had an argument to make that it is a previously existing position of the government. Because anything that happens the day before the Supreme Court meets on a case, it's the previously existing position of the government.
So Todd, what you're saying is it's kind of like a leak in a faucet. If there's a leak in
Yep.
the faucet, it can get worse. And we
Right.
want to make sure that we plug up that leak.
And for some people, we might be the bucket. So what we got to do in our community is we've got to support each other, right? We've got to look at what the state's going to do based on what the federal result of all this is, right? So it can't be just about OPWDD arguing for money for DSPs, right? Because we're going to be fighting an even bigger war with federal money with everybody else that's got a need. Deaf people needing interpreters, mental health professionals needing additional training or opportunities for community engagement, right? We need to fight together as a group and say that all of these things are important.
I just want to add, I serve on a lot of boards and committees, and in a lot of the meetings that I do, although many of our system people are very good people, a lot of what is said and justification for services are around regulations, right? Things are done because they're told to be done, right? And if there's question about that, then although we don't want it to, and we're gonna fight for it not to be that way, we don't want regulations to change so that service systems across our country go, well, the regulations don't, they're dialing back. So that may mean that we don't have to do what we used to do. So we want to always make sure that we put good pressure on our systems to keep things the same or make them better.
So I give you an example. About, I don't know, 8 or 9 months ago, Department of Energy put something in the Federal Register. Now, for any of you guys that never took civics, right? I'm just a bill, never told you what happened after bill became a law, right? So what happens after a bill becomes a law is, on the federal government side, it's assigned to a executive department, and the executive department writes regulations about how the bill is implemented, right? And it's important to think about the fact that it's the regulations that cause the change we see, not necessarily always the law itself, right? So here we have DOJ, who for 25 years have had these regulations. This is, look, you should be looking for options. And other departments of the federal government said, look, we see that, we see that. So here's some Medicaid waiver ideas, right? Everybody here knows what a Medicaid waiver is, right? Medicaid waivers became prominent and are assisting people with disabilities and living in the community because the federal government needed some funding to be able to create some options, so they weren't running afoul of Olmstead, right? Now it's going to be a thing that we're going to need to continue to drive to say is important, right? Whether the law or the regulation deliberately screams it out, because for 20 years, one of my biggest frustrations is when they mention Olmstead in the media, they call it a law. It's not. It's a decision of 9 guys in Washington, D.C. in black robes. And probably the most positive decision those 9 guys ever made in our favor, right? Because before that, all we got were lawsuits that went to the Supreme Court about prisoners wanting access to television sets. And I don't want to offend people by this example, but it is legitimately true. You can go look it up. Strippers demanding access to accessible stripper poles. These are the things that went to the Supreme Court before Olmstead, right? So I want to charge everybody who's listening to this, who thinks this is of value to them and their organizations and their agencies and their people, that we as a group have to monitor this, and we have to say to everyone, anybody that is looking for our vote in November, right? Do you believe I have the right to be in the community with everybody else? That question should be asked of every politician, every public policy person, and every community volunteer. Because the more that word gets around, right, the more we're going to be able to change the track in which this is going. And not for nothing, before the Supreme Court hears this case, there's going to be an election, right? And anybody ever knows what happens with elections? Anybody that spends any time watching polls? I mean, I do because I'm a public policy guy, but one poll says one thing and another poll says something completely opposite, and I can never figure it out. But here's what I think. I think it's possible that with a change in administration, there's going to be a change in the path of this, even if the Supreme Court says that the province is the states. Okay? The Supreme Court is not going to come out in an opinion and say, we don't have the right to be in the community. What they're going to do is they're going to say something a lot more limited. They're going to say, states have the right to consider all factors when spending money, right? Because they don't want to put money, they want to put money in some things, but they don't want to put money in other things. But federal regulations up to this point have been forcing their hand, and they've been spending money, especially in apparently Texas, where they don't want to.
And we have
But,
time for questions coming up in just a second, Todd. Is it okay if I
oh yeah,
reflect back what I heard from you for a moment?
absolutely.
So what I've been hearing is that this memo does not change the Olmstead decision, that the decision is staying put. But what it is, it's telling us that how that gets implemented, how that looks, how it's enforced may be changing. And there's ways of putting positive pressure to stay the way that we've been, by putting pressure on our elected officials, and by monitoring the changes that happen. And we've talked a little bit about how to monitor maybe what's going on with our state in particular. And we can also figure out how to watch negative pressure, like what you shared from the attack on 504. So as we watch states drop out, that's a good sign, that this negative pressure to have less regulation in this area. So we can watch and see what's good by encouraging each other, and we can see what's bad go down by clicking the link that you shared in the chat. Is that right?
That's pretty much a good summary, but I'm just going to add one other point to the advocates that I know very well that are sitting here. Okay. At some point, this might be a situation where we as New Yorkers need to be brave so that we can encourage people in other states that don't have what we have to step up and use their voices. Because remember the 504 protest, right, in 1980. Because remember I told you how, laws need regulations? Well, when they originally passed 504, it took them 8 years to get regulations because nobody wanted to sign it because they thought disabled people living in the community were too expensive. So there was a bunch of protests, actually, one in every federal region, but the one that makes history that you can look up on YouTube is the 504 protest in San Francisco, California, right? Judy Heumann was there. Judy Heumann, a New Yorker, right? And if you look at the movers and shakers in the movement, a good number of them were New Yorkers, right? Fighting for regulations to be passed. And not for nothing, I know every advocate, when they began being an advocate, they all get nervous about speaking in public and they never know if they can do it right. Listen to who was nationally acknowledged as the mother of our movement speak for the first time to HHS about why they don't write regulations. I think it's going to be important for us to educate our fellow advocates and that we may need to be brave for other people. I just need, and I know my fellow advocates are prepared to do that, right, Sam? Right? I know Robin is because Robin's done it. I know Mike is because Mike's done it. But I need people to realize that in this conversation, talking about the memo and about Olmstead, it's a national thing, and it's got to be about us coming together. That's was my final point. Questions, if there are any, would be wonderful. Let's have a conversation. I love it.
Yeah, shall we open it up to the Q&A? I'll try to keep keep an eye on hands raised so I can just kind of go in order with folks. Courtney, did you want to get us started?
Thank you,
And I'll
David.
get to you, Hannah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. I think a lot of you know me. Hi, Robin. Hi, Hannah. Hi, Ann, Sam, Mike, and everyone. So I wanted to say, Todd, I agreed with everything you said, especially with the fact that different communities within the disability community need to work together. Sam and Ann know about my breathing issues. I sleep on a ventilator at night. I use oxygen 24/7. And when I saw the notice from the DOJ, I know the general public will think that this only affects perhaps OPWDD in New York State and like similar services around the US, but it doesn't. It affects any access to healthcare services in your home, period. Like I said, I just use a ventilator and I use oxygen, and that's in my community. If I didn't have access to those things through my home care company, then I would be stuck in an institution. And actually, like 2 years ago, I was stuck in the hospital for over a month longer than I needed to be there because we couldn't ensure that I had access to oxygen because I my insurance had gotten messed up. So that's a real thing. Like the general public needs to understand that it affects the whole disability community. And it doesn't matter what type of disability you have. There's a lot of us that have chronic health issues. There's that crosses all the communities. Like you can, as we all know, like disabilities, they cross. Like, and so just because you may not have a developmental disability, you may, have a breathing issue. You may sleep on a BiPAP machine, or you might require physical therapy. Um, all of that has been influenced by the Olmstead decision. The insistence that we are allowed to be in the community and that we don't have to be inpatient in a hospital to get the services that we need. Um, there are so many services in the pediatric sector, speech therapy and such, that's integrated into the schools. That would be gone. As it is, once you leave the pediatric sector into the adult sector, we're already at a deficit. It feels like, you turn 18 or 21.
How do we tell everybody?
Well, that's what we got to figure out. And we have to like break the siloing. The fact that the different communities are only, we talk amongst ourselves instead of
Okay, thank you very much.
overreaching between the communities, like Todd was saying. We need to unite all together.
The great thing about this is we're standing in a Zoom owned by an agency that does the exact opposite of siloing. David and I are both board members of Voice Buffalo. Mike Rogers runs the disability advocacy program for Voice Buffalo, and we have an open tent. We let anybody in the door, right? So I'm looking at Voice kind of being that entity that brings everybody under one tent to be talking about what matters to us. Because I'm not going to have a war with Donnie, right? Or the Mental Health Association, right? About whether their issues are important or not. For their people, their issues are important. But there comes a point where we all have to turn around and say, this matters to us all, right? Any science fiction fans on the planet, right? So say we all, right? That's the message we need to make to these people, both in our state and our federal government, that says you're not going to divide us by prioritizing different money in different sectors for different things. But so Courtney, I really appreciate the comment. And Robin, I hope that answers your question, because we did this tonight partially to bring Voice into that frame so that Voice and Arise can be the place you come to come under the one tent where we talk about what matters for everyone. And I'm expecting Mike to nod his head anytime now.
Yeah, well, yes.
May I hop in real quick?
I'll get to that at the end, but I just wanted to comment. I'm gonna kind of say this at the end, but I can say it quickly at the end. I think one of the things as well is, and I think 1,000,000% we need to get together on board as we should, as we've done in the past and will do it in the future, as people with disabilities, and and support each other across the country and the world if we need to do that. But also there comes a time when we need to gather our allies. And we have a lot of allies that are not in the disability community, but there are a lot of people through our world that use phrases like, well, it is the way that it is. And there's many factors, and we can't change things, blah blah blah. Or there's the other end of the spectrum, is like with people that have been in my life. um they'll say, well, they wouldn't stop services for you. you'll always have services, people with disabilities, like we came down from the clouds or something, and we're here to make the world better, and everybody will just give us what we want. So we need to educate people, that are not in our community about our issues and let them know that we need their help because the more numbers speak up in support of the rights of people with disabilities, the better rights are will be.
Hannah,
I
you have
want to
been
make
waiting
sure I
very
want to make sure
patiently.
Hannah
Did
gets
you
in.
want
Yeah.
to? Yeah. Good hunting.
Sure, I'll comment. I recently just did this, and I don't know how many people on this call or on a Zoom know about this, but I recently had to go and renew my Medicaid forms because, of course, it's that time to renew Medicaid. Well, my parents, who have done it before for me in the past, unexpectedly found out that there are more questions this year because the current federal level, and I think, Todd, you should hear this, there are questions in on that form for Medicaid that talks about immigration, and it's already integrated inside that Medicaid form. Now, my dad had to
You
go down to the RAF building, downtown Buffalo, and give them all of my information. Everything was photocopied. We made sure we got copies of everything. Now, I want to warn people of this because it's going to happen to you guys. Because they're supposedly saying my Medicaid ends on September 1st.
hold on. Let's be very clear because you're making a really important point, but I want to
Yes.
provide some detail. You
Yes.
guys got to think what they lovingly call HR1, or what they referred to as the one big beautiful or
For
ugly bill, depending upon which side you're on,
Mhm.
right? This is the bill that turned around and said Medicaid's got to prove certain things about what they're not spending money on, and what they're not spending money on is immigrants and migrants. There are some people, however, because of how they get Medicaid, that shouldn't be getting federal renewal forms, right? If you're getting Medicaid because you're on supplemental security income, SSI, right? Your Medicaid is automatic based on your SSI case being open. You shouldn't be receiving any renewal notices at all. As long as your SSI is active, your Medicaid is active. If you're getting Medicaid while you're on SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, right? That's that's not your primary form of health care. Medicare is. But there are some people, because you got to be in SSDI for 48 months before you're eligible for Medicare, right? Those people might be getting renewal notices in the mail because they still have to prove that because of the needs of their disability, they still need Medicaid because Medicare doesn't serve them, right? So we got to be very clear because you're absolutely right, right? You are going to be asked to provide proof of citizenship due to HR1, right? Or proof of legal ability to access a public charge is the big thing about it. That is absolutely an important thing, Hannah. And as Voice Buffalo moves forward in talking about stuff, right? One of the things we want to start doing with our lunch and learns is to kind of bring those things in so that you're saying, what's happening with SNAP? What's happening with Medicaid? What's happening with Medicare? What's happening with those things that are critical to my care that I need, right?
Yeah.
I just got into a big conversation with somebody the other day about SNAP because just like Mike said, they turned around and said, no. They're not looking to cut benefits for you. It's the you people defense, right? I get this a lot at my Meet the Candidates Day. Come see it. We're not talking about you people, but guys, if you're on SSI, you know that you only get $20 of food stamps. But if you're on SSDI, you might get more, but it goes down every time your SSDI goes up, which is every year, right? And why is that a thing? Because the government said two different things about two different disability programs, and the Department of Agriculture says that one of us has money for food and the other one doesn't. Right? All of this stuff is complicating because I will go back to my friend Courtney, right? Who knows how important her diet is in being able to stay healthy? Who knows how important sleep is in order to stay healthy? Right? So, very important thing, Hannah. And I'm sorry that I got on my soapbox again,
It's
Andrea. I'm
okay.
sorry. But,
I do want to
but
make also this valid point. If you guys do go in person to hand in your Medicaid forms, make sure you get a receipt because my dad got a receipt to make sure that they are, and I will tell you guys this, they are backlogged until last March 2025. They are backlogged. So you guys are going to be waiting a long time for them to renew your Medicaid stuff because it's going to take a long time. Now,
right.
I'm lucky
And
enough
plan
that I
ahead.
do have parents to pay.
I already renewed everything.
Did you get a receipt, Robin?
No, but
Now,
my mother got the same form that,
right.
and
Because
it said the same thing. If I never had SSDI before, that wasn't a thing for me. Now it is because of the fact that it's new to me because I haven't had that before. Because my father passed away, you know.
mm, and they and they converted you from sole SSDI to what's called survivor's benefits, which is an SSDI thing, right? So
Yes,
now you're on the track for renewal.
yes.
For those people that don't
But
have parents who need
but
help getting their renewals done when their renewals come,
but I already
Western New
did,
York,
Todd, because I already did it. It's I
right?
won't lose nothing.
But we're recording this for other people to watch because we need to encourage people to watch it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for those people that are watching, if you need assistance with a Medicaid renewal and you don't have relatives that are going to help you do it, what I want you to do is call Western New York Independent Living, 716-836-0822, and talk to our intake department about helping you with your Medicaid renewal. We have what's called the non-MAGI Medicaid Application Assistance Program that can help you with your renewals, right? Including, by the way, electronic filing, so we have proof that it made it into the system, Hannah. So I'm just out there for you, right?
Good call.
I
Good
wanted,
call.
Todd, we have people from
yeah,
across the state on the call. So,
Uh-huh.
since we went down
Every
the wormhole,
every region, every region of the state has a Medicaid application assistance program, right? So your local independent living center, wherever you are, is going to be able to help you find it if they're not hosting it. It just
okay,
happens to be convenient that I know about it because we have it here, but I know that every region has one,
okay,
right? And your ILC, your local one, will help you find it. I
okay.
see hands up.
Sam,
Yeah,
I think you had your hand up the longest. Did you want to hop in real quick?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just real quick, I was in a meeting today, that brought up Olmstead, and there was some language that was not correct by some political people. But
Who did it, Sam?
I just wanted to ask this one question. If you submit your Medicaid, if you submit your Medicaid and you don't get a response and your Medicaid date runs out, do you still have Medicaid even though you don't or haven't gotten a notice?
So here's the thing. If so in your question, right? You know you're supposed to renew, or maybe you haven't gotten a notice about renewing, so you don't know you're supposed to renew, and you get a notice of cancellation. Your Medicaid's due to end. You're going to get a 10-day notice, right? You're
Yep.
asking what somebody does if they get in that situation. They get a 10-day notice, right?
Well, what I'm asking is if they did the paperwork but haven't received the response, does
Well,
their Medicaid continue?
it gets that whole thing about back to what Hannah said, right? You're going to need to prove that you submitted the paperwork, right? In order for you to get an extension of your Medicaid while they consider it. Medicaid renewals are supposed to take a maximum of 60 days, but can be extended to 120 days, I think, right? So it's important if you're turning in paperwork, right? If you're sending it by mail, pay the extra $225 and have them certify the mail so that something comes back to you with somebody's signature on it, right? Or there's a receipt that says the Postal Service delivered it on X day so that you know it was placed in their hands. If you're doing it in person, like Hannah said, ask them to get a receipt. If you're coming to a program like a MAP program, they're going to have case notes and records that say, we took your information, we entered it into the system, it's going to, it happens on this date. It's important you have proof you turned in your paper. With proof you turned in your paper, you can get your Medicaid extended.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it got out
Yeah.
there.
And by the way,
Kevin,
that's
oh,
a
go ahead,
fair
Todd.
hearing decision that we can talk about later. Yeah.
Well, Dave, before we go on to Kevin, Russell has had his hand up since like the beginning of our discussion
Oh,
because he
oh,
put his digital hand up. So I wanted to go to Russell for a moment.
okay, okay.
Oh, we gotta unmute Russell.
Okay.
Here's Russell.
Oh,
Okay. You guys. I did that. I Medicaid all my life.
Oh, you did your Medicaid paperwork all by yourself?
Yeah, I did all my paperwork.
Oh, you didn't get any paperwork yet.
No. Yeah, I very good. Well,
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 it should come once a year if you remember when you usually get it. If you don't get it by that time, you should inquire about that.
oh,
Yeah, so inquire like I usually get mine around in like March. So if I don't get it around the next March, I start inquiring with my care coordinator and with my Medicaid worker about, what's going on with that, just so that I'm not late.
we get a new one. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get a new one.
yeah, yeah. So you gotta make sure that you do that.
Yeah,
Well, check into that, Ross. Check into that.
no, well, yeah.
And that you're not the only one that probably doesn't know that. So don't feel so bad. But make sure you check into that.
No, I ain't gonna call my worker.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
yeah, new one. I did not know.
Yeah, don't I know you didn't. Don't kill yourself over it, but just
No, I did not know.
okay. All right.
Then we have one more
I'll go
question
back
from
to
Kevin,
David.
and then I think Anne had an excellent segue in the chat as we look at
Mhm.
what's our strategy going forward. What can we do about this together? So we have another question from Kevin.
Sure.
But a question and a little bit of a comment as well. You see, I do receive SSDI benefits as well as SNAP benefits. I'm really in fear of having my benefits decrease because of the government spending. Now, how possible would that be, or whether or not that we will be forgotten about?
Well, I think in this climate, Kevin, we really need, because I know you're a big advocate, with SANYS, and um you're you talk to a lot of our public officials. So I think we have to keep, one of the things that people always forget a little bit is the impact of personal stories, right? And we have to remember also that and I always say this, Kevin, that public officials have power, but they're not gods. And we have to remember that we elected them, right? Just like all of our services, we we elected them. And as far as the service system, these are our service systems because they get paid through our money, right? So we always have to remember that they have to start providing good customer service. And in the case of our public officials, that means listening to us, right? It doesn't matter how many books they write. They're they're there to listen to us, right? So that's always my message. And I think we always have to remember that. Um, Andrea, you were talking about a Segway, and I'm not talking about the little bike thing. What
Uh,
did you want to, how
real,
did you want to go?
real
I
quick
think,
because I'm
oh, go ahead,
following,
Todd.
real quick because I'm following the chat. Um, the question about if you have OPWDD and you have a service coordinator, right? Is your care coordinator going to get the notices or be required to do the renewal for you? The answer is not what I'm seeing on the chat. The care coordinators are not required to do your renewals for you, nor do they get the notices instead of you. They are, however, supposed to help you with renewals if you request it, right? So it's really important if you're one of those people that you think you're going to get a renewal, that the minute that sucker comes in, you get the CC on the phone and get started with the renewal,
Yes. And if they
right?
say it's going to take too much time, to tell them that that's their job. And, if they need more coffee, get more coffee or more sleep. Otherwise, boo-hoo to them. That's their job to help you.
Right.
Mhm.
And
We
now
have
you can go. Now you can go back to the segue, and I'm not talking about the scooter thing either.
Many thanks, Todd. We have such a wealth of knowledge on the call. And so thanks so much for submitting questions. Thank you guys so much for all of your really insightful answers. I know Anne had a beautiful question about what to do next, right? I think it's easy to hear about what's not going well or what's going poorly because there's a lot of things not going well. And the thing that makes a big difference in my life between getting stuck in despair and moving forward is having something actionable, right? And so Mike has a list of actions that we can take from wherever we're situated to move forward and help put that positive pressure to help
I
protect
I
both
do.
ourselves,
I
our
do.
neighbors, and folks in other states.
I do. I'm going to my little notes here that Kat put together for my wonderful memory that is not very good. Okay. So one of the things that we need to do, as I said before, is we need to educate allies. We need to educate allies, and that means talk to people, whether it be your family, your neighbors, your friends, because not everybody knows what you go through because they don't live it. And we shouldn't always expect people to understand everything about our lives when they don't live it. But we can be that bridge. I know, Sam and myself have done that with our neighbors and our friends in the community that don't know what we go through, and we invite them to be at our events and to participate. I think one of our neighbors is on tonight. If that's the person that is on the call, it may not be because they're not talking, but um, that is really important, right? Because people often think that will just get everything because we need it, right? I get that all the time. It gets to the point where it's sickening. Oh, nothing will ever be taken away from you because you guys need it. And I'll ask people to step up and talk, and they'll be like, "Well, I don't do that. I'm not comfortable, reaching out to our public officials and stuff." But we really have to be that energy, that guiding force to say, yes, we need you to speak because we're not on this planet alone, right? That's important. That's the first thing, right? And let them know what integration means and what living in the community is all about. I'll tell one quick story because I know we have a little time. Um, I had a neighbor recently who recently moved out of his apartment, but I was rolling with him while he walked, and he said to me, "Yeah, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't know how you live if I wasn't your neighbor." And I think that's a great example of somebody learning through experience, right? So I think we constantly got to be an example of what we want to see from other people. And that means being out there, talking to people, letting them know what's going on, what things are a little bit of a threat to us so they can support. Um, so Disability Voting Rights Week is the second week um, of September. So talk to your candidates, right? Talk to talk to people that want to be elected and let them know how important, these issues are. Because not all of our public officials know everything about disability either, right? So we always have to make those appointments, go to those public forums to let people know. And
And then
then,
locally in Buffalo in October, you'll have a Meet the Candidates Day,
yes,
October 14th in Buffalo.
yes,
So
yes.
come and meet the candidates who sign up to take a beating from us for 10 minutes at a time.
Yes. And also, we talk about going to Albany all the time, and there is a great benefit to going to Albany, right? But that takes some time and sometimes money. But you have to remember, no matter where you live, you have your local officials. So you should be aware of who they are and where their offices are and not be afraid to reach out to them, right? You know, don't be afraid to make an appointment. You don't have to know everything perfect. I sure don't. I mess up all the time when I'm talking to people, but I'm getting my point across, right? And I think that is what is important, that they know you are a voter and you're in their, district, and that they should be listening to your issues, right? And build up those positive relationships with them as well. Um, so we should not only be we should not only be like Todd was talking about, making sure that our local governor and our local officials know about our issues, right? But we're part of a larger disability rights movement throughout the country and the world. But throughout the country, for the moment, we want to talk about that. So the American Association of People with Disabilities has created a pretty easy to use. I want to write some more stuff in the little boxes, but I went on there today and I was like, what is it like? So you put Kat is gonna hopefully put that in the chat, and we're gonna even send these out to our registered people so that you guys can do this. But you click on the link, you put in your information. It will bring up who your governor and attorney general are, and there is an already typed out thing. You can just put your name in there, but you can also type your own message. So and press send so that they know that that Olmstead and things that you are, you know, interested in are important to you. And, that is something that we can do to support um, our other, our other brothers and sisters in the other states so that they know that we're with them, right? That we're with them in the fight, right? So that's important. So, um, also, and I'm gonna call on Renee in a second to explain what she does, as well as Andrea. But as Todd was really plugging a rise of Western New York through Voice Buffalo, we really do work on things that push for inclusion, disability rights and things that are important to us. And we meet every second Wednesday online at 10 a.m. to 11:30, and that's why we're doing this tonight, because this is one of the things that we thought were important. So if you want to, become part of that, you can email me at mrogers, that's ROGERS, at SANYS. That is not Santa, it's SANYS. It's SANYS.org. And that's SANYS.org. So, because that's a common mistake sometimes. So I wanted to say about that, but there are other avenues as well. And I want to ask Renee to talk a little bit about the work that she does.
Hi everybody. So I'm Renee Christian, and I do work around home care. We've been talking about community-based services tonight and how we're all impacted by them and how important they are. And one of those services is home care and access to home care within your home. So we have a local coalition that we started called the Care Not Corruption Coalition that people can get involved in to help advocate for access to care, better wages for caregivers, and to remove private equity from care systems that people can come on to. It is on the first and third Wednesday of every month at 2 o'clock on Zoom. And if you'd like to connect with me about that, you can send me an email at renee@caringmajorityrising.org. So I would love to have you on there.
Okay. And Andrea, what you're hosting us tonight, but what do you do and why is it important and why should people get involved?
Well, thanks so much, Mike. Well, so much is what you were saying about how do we educate allies? Like, how do we bring more folks into our movement? And so, Large Buffalo is a community of folks with and without intellectual and developmental disabilities who do things together. So, I think the easiest way to get involved is to join our newsletter, check out our calendar. We have all sorts of events going on throughout the month, designed for folks with and without disabilities to get to know each other, to be building empathy, and to have that storytelling. So second Mondays and fourth Friday dinners in particular, we have dinner at 6 p.m. It's pay what you can, so everyone is welcome. And it's designed to create relationships across ability. So you can stay after, learn songs with us if you desire, or just meet neighbors over the table. It's been a great opportunity for folks to both have that empathy building as well as for it to be their first step into advocacy with adults with disabilities. I think I've been very blessed to have so many adults with disabilities in my life because of this work. Um, and so I think without this touch point, a lot of folks don't know, like, oh, what would that be like? Or what can I anticipate as my own body and mind changes? And so if you're looking for a way to loop somebody in, if you don't want to do the storytelling all by yourself, bring potential allies to our dinners, and we can help do some of that work for you. We would love to see you and or your friends there.
Now we have now Andrea, because my memory, is like a Swiss cheese. We have we have people from across the state. Is Buffalo the only large location?
That's such a great question, Mike. No, so L'Arche is part of a international federation. There's about 20 L'Arche communities of folks with and without disabilities doing stuff together across the country. And New York actually has three L'Arche communities. There's one in Syracuse and one in Long Island. And so they've been great opportunities for folks a lot of them have houses, and folks will like intern there for a year and do home care with the support of a great community that's meant to kind of change how folks think about disability. So we've had like chaplains and doctors and nurses and people who go on to do all sorts of things not related to disability, who've lived in a home and been mentored by folks with disabilities. And that really changes the whole community, right? And so, yeah, so if you're not in Western New York, but you're close by Syracuse or close by Long Island, pointing potential allies toward your nearest large community is a great idea. And I would also be remiss not to mention that we have a fundraiser coming up on September 11th at the Lodge at Woodlawn Beach. We would love to have any of you there as well to hear more about our programming and support these kinds of events that bring folks together, right?
Yeah, because we talk about building community, and to be able to build community, you have to be together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we all love AI and computers being on Zoom and things like that. We have our own living AI, Todd Vaarwerk, right? But but I
Personal
think that
Claude.
but yes, but I think we have, after the pandemic, we have to learn to come together again. So I
Yeah.
think I think that's very important, right? So you know it's great that we're doing this, but we have to follow up. Anne said, what can we do? We have to do something, right? We don't need to keep making these excuses. Like, I have people say, "Well, Mike, you know things. You're smarter. You can do." It's got nothing to about me being smarter. It's got me taking the time to make that minute and a half phone call, or schedule that visit to my public officials, and going there. Or we could even use Zoom. A lot of public officials like virtual meetings, because they don't have to go anywhere either, right? So they like that. So we really want to thank you guys for coming on, and this is being recorded, so you can share this with people. It's going to be put on YouTube under Voice Buffalo. The greatest organizer in the world, Kat, is going to make sure that it's up there, and that she puts all the relevant links so that you can share this with people. I mean, we like going on all the reels that are useless, so we should do something that matters, right? So that means, scrolling at night, you can just share this with people and they can learn, right? So we want to thank everybody for coming on tonight. And I am not in witness protection. That's just because the sun is hitting my face and is blocking out the ability to see me. So I just wanted to
Well,
say that.
well,
That's
Mike, you are on
fantastic.
a
Thanks
Zoom
so
meeting
much,
from an
Mike.
undisclosed location.
Yeah, well, that's true. But my voice didn't get deeper or anything, so it's all good.
I'll say you
But
And I
raise a great point, Mike. If we could all just take 1 second and think, there were so many incredible follow-ups listed. Are you going to come to dinner? Are you going to go on the third Wednesday of the month for the Care and Not Corruption Coalition? Are we going to see you at the next Arise meeting? Are you putting on your calendar the Disability Voting Rights Act week? So take a second and put something on your calendar, write something down. What's your follow-up? I think is the biggest thing we can do to fight despair and to fight these terrible changes is to take action. So what's one thing that's actionable for you think about it, write it down. And then I want to go ahead and thank all of our presenters. Thank you so much, Mike, and Todd, and Renee, and David, and Robin, and Kat for pulling everything together. Thank you so much for all of the effort to put this together because these things really, really matter, right?
Yeah, I just want to echo that. And also thank you, Andrea, for hosting this as well. It's a beautiful job.
Truly my
Thank you to everyone
pleasure.
who participated
Very
and joined
nice.
us today.
Yes.
All right,
Awesome.
everybody. Keep coming to
Much
our
love.
things
Yes.
and share. Whenever you watch this, keep sharing.
Yeah, share the video, right? And keep talking about what matters to you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good night, all.
Good night,
Night,
all. Thank you so
everyone.
Good
much.
night.
Buddy.
Everyone,
Bye.
bye.